Yeah, it's best to stay within the law if you know how to use the law. Otherwise, if you're outside the law, you're an enemy of the state.
Or an outlaw even.
Yeah, outlaw. No man's land.
Okay, now just on that point, for some people are saying, well, there's no credibility with the system and whatever. So what's the advantage, or why would you be doing that? Why isn't there an alternative where we can just say, no, go away, like you're not a legal government, you're a corporation, I don't want to participate with this, it's all a farce? Where do you end up if you do that?
Well, the government only exists because of you. Because of your legal person is your government. So when you're in conflict with the government, you're in conflict with your person, your legal personality, which has a legal life. Mm-hmm. That's who you're in conflict with. They're only representing your legal life, which, by the way, isn't you. But when you understand who you are within legislation and how everything interacts with your person and how they are interacting with your person through agencies, then you can take control of your person and then direct the agency that's acting upon you, because you thought you were the agent.
Right. Now, when it comes down to doing that, we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that I think you were going to go back into the Privacy Act. Yep. Because that's that's our main armour, isn't it?
Yes. So I just on the chat, I just uploaded the key points out of the Privacy Act to exercise your protections and your rights. So everyone can download that PDF for their own consideration. Can you see that PDF? I posted it early. So everyone should be able to download that off there, eh?
Yeah, off the chat. Yes, they should.
Yeah, off the chat. So if you download that and open it up, then we can take a walk within the law and see who you are within this act specifically. See, the problem is every act has a different combination and different relationship. It's not always the same relationship.
So you're saying that we can have a word in one act that means one thing, but in another act it could mean something else?
Your person is acting in a different role in every act. Mm-hmm. But the controller is always going to be the Crown. Mm-hmm. So, which is yourself, which is the identity that's been hidden from you in plain view that you didn't know about. So the whole existence only exists through all the legislative instruments that bind the Crown. Otherwise, they don't exist. Mm-hmm. So why be outside the law and be belligerent, attacking the very servants that serve you, but you haven't identified yourself correctly as the Crown to give them proper directions? That's the scenario, and what's happening everywhere. Because how many people have actually looked at an act? Maybe one or two, but everything you do in life is regulated by an act.
So, but surely, like, ignorance of the law is an excuse, isn't it? You can say, "Oh, I didn't know about that."
Well, they a lot of people use that as a defence. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, but they do have another provision there where if that ignorance can be used as an excuse.
But you can use
with a double-edged sword, yeah, in the Crimes Act, especially over here.
Okay.
But if you look at the Privacy Act, if you look at every company, every product, it has a privacy provision.
So, and when you say every company or every corporation, you're talking about police forces and the local council and things that people might think are a government as well, aren't you?
As well, every government department, every part of the public state services are governed by the Privacy Act, because through the Privacy Act is where they're sharing approved information agreements and information agreements. So they're sharing your information through all these agencies under this one act. So within the act, if it binds the Crown, it has to provide protections, and it does. But you got to get the relationship right in relation to all these agencies that are acting between yourself and your agent and all the agencies within the public. So it's a private-public partnership. You just didn't know your proper status in the private to be able to exercise your powers in the public.
Okay, so if you're dealing with an instrument that's been served on you or whatever, one of the things that you have to identify is what act or statute that they're using.
Yes.
And what the privacy statement, if you like, of the people that are, or the organisation that's serving a notice on you. You have to identify what their privacy policy is. And
okay. Example, if you get a traffic infringement, so they are prosecuting your person under this section of this act. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that act binds the Crown, there's got to be remedy in there for it to be binding on you through your person. So through the Privacy Act, because they're using your private information, who gave them the authority to? So you're using the Privacy Act to umbrella the act that they're using against you.
So
So you got to use this one to exercise this one over here, so to speak.
If our privacy is breached, who is it that facilitates the breach of privacy?
The Privacy Commissioner. So that's come about through birth, deaths and marriages when they registered under civil registration of birth, deaths and marriages is where these approved information sharing agreements were made through the Privacy Commissioner to all the other departments. When you look through a matrix of the legislation. So he's the one that shared your information through all these other departments.
Well, what right do they have to share that?
Well, that goes back to the Health Sector Transfer Act. Over here, there'll be same provisions over there under Act over there, where the enrolment at the doctors gave them the right. There's hidden provisions within every agreement. I just shared, I just enlightened another chap on another Zoom, and he tried to get it, connect the dots within his mind. I showed him in the Health Sector Transfer Act that in relation to every agreement that you ever entered into through your life, there's been assets, liabilities, and rights transferred before you even entered into the agreement.
So would that be the initial registration, for example, of the birth?
No, not the birth. Your enrolment at the doctors. Your mother's enrolment at the doctors is where you were captured before you were even conceived.
Mm-hmm.
So they already got this hidden agreements, all the elements of hidden agreements already imprinted before you even entered into agreement. That's where they get you. It's a hidden hand of administration for these terms and conditions of any types of agreements that you enter into that's already in place, hidden in plain view.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Crown, because I'd like to play devil's advocate as well, right? And I don't mind making you squirm. So
yeah.
How do you know that?
Okay, can you allow me to share the screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, when we're talking about law and commerce, it has a time jurisdiction.
You should be able to share your screen now.
New Zealand is where the source of all this information, all this coding is coming from, and it's transferred through to Australia through the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Act. So we're connected And a lot of the legislation in New Zealand you'll find is mirror imaged in Australia. So here we go. Now, your enrolment at your primary health organisation is transferring assets, liabilities and rights to everything that you believe that you own, even yourself, with the name that you are using on their birth certificate. Now that funds well, over here we have our primary health organisation, then we have our district health boards under the Canterbury Health Board, and that's connected to the World Health Organization. You know, the World Health Organization is the World Bank. So all your assets, all your liability and rights are being administered from the World Bank through the World Health Organization through your enrollment at the primary health organization. So the agreement and the consent is there. Now, why would the health sector be in the business of transferring assets, liabilities and rights? Because the word health is synonymous with wealth. Just do etymology on the word health. They're actually transferring your wealth. And they're doing this through these hidden agreements. That piece of paper, before you put anything on that piece of paper, it's already got this hidden agreement behind it. Before you open your mouth and enter into an agreement, that's already been blueprinted right here. Here's the elements of every agreement that you would ever enter into throughout your whole life that the government has control over before you even enter into it. So every element of every agreement, here's the blueprint for it. So you're already in agreement with the government. Contract's already there. So agreement includes a deed, a contract, agreement, an arrangement, and an understanding. You know, when they say, oh, do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
An understanding. Do you have an understanding? Whether oral or written, expressed or implied, and whether or not enforceable at law. They got you either way. And without limitations. Includes a contract of service, a deed, a contract, agreement, and arrangement creating or evidencing a trust. Now, the other hidden features in this agreement is all the parties to this agreement, which includes the Crown, yourself, but you didn't know that you were in this agreement that was even created before you even already spoke it or you put it on a piece of paper. These are all the elements of every agreement that you will ever enter into. You know, when Donald Trump's trying to drain the swamp, the administrative swamp, here's their hidden hand of control. So here's all your assets. Everything you ever think that you own, you do not own. There's a list of all the assets that you could ever think of, that you believe that you own, you don't. And what's created in these trusts is a Crown endowment. Crown endowment, which is the trust, which is in the name of that person on the birth certificate, which means in relation to land. Now, when they're referring to land, we're also referring to instruments, not just the land that you walk on out there, but instruments. Law of landed property. Land held by the DHB in trust settled by the Crown, yourself or your parents. See, you didn't even know that you were the Crown in this agreement. Or by, just the word by, look at that. You use the word by, there's a transfer of assets, liabilities, and rights. Or pursuant to any acts, provisional ordinance, grant. So the Crown is the settlor of that trust, and also the grantor. But you didn't know you were the Crown. Because it's important when we understand how to exercise our rights in all these legislative instruments or order in council in respect of that land. Whether, now that land that we're referring to is that land that we were born in, which is the placenta, the land, which is the crown endowment, which is the crown endowment land.
Okay, Crown, if I may, just because I have lots of conversations with lots of different people. So there's things that come up. So here's one. You would have heard this before. I didn't agree to any of this. There was no meeting of the minds. I wasn't informed. How can I be contracted into this? This isn't fair. And I'm not playing. As far as I'm concerned, I don't believe in this. I'm not having a bar of it.
Okay, so the first thing they need to create a statement, a contract, is your name. And they ask, what for? Your name.
But this was all done before I could participate. I couldn't even wash myself.
Oh, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Well, what about my age? I was below the age of consent. I mean, I was in utero. I was in utero when this happened. Like that's not a fair contract.
I hear you, but you know.
Can I help you? There's no such thing as the not fair.
Everything, when we do some due diligence in relation to the name, it's the name that they need every time to form the contract. And within that name, you got a given and a family name. And that's represented in the, if we go, I'm not religious anyway, but the code book to all this legislation is straight out of the Bible. So the process that they use to capture everyone is, you know, let me read the code out for everyone to hear. Because
well, just while you're there, just before you read that out, when you say like the family name, your last name, or whatever you want to call it, is there an entity that owns that?
Yeah, the Crown does.
The Crown owns it.
Yes.
Well, how come it's used against me? If I own it, how come something else is using it against me?
Okay, so this estate that's created, this estate was disclaimed by the Crown yourself. It was disclaimed by using the name.
Okay, so
that's the oath, isn't owned by the Crown. I'll give you an example. I'll show you in legislation how that occurs. Okay, and it'll be in the legislation over there too. It's called disclaimed. So if I go into contents here, disclaimed. Okay. And we go to land, because they're referring to land, right? Land transfer. House Sector Transfer Act. What's being transferred? Assets, liabilities, and rights through a Crown endowment and Crown endowment land. So there was a transfer of land. And this is what's occurred because we didn't stand up and identify ourselves as the Crown. Can you read that there? The registrar must not proceed with the application unless if the Crown is entitled under an enactment to disclaim the estate. The Crown has disclaimed the estate. How we have disclaimed the estate? Because we used the name of the estate. Where was it transferred to? Oh, to the company. So that estate that was disclaimed is held by the company in the treasury as bona vacantia, unclaimed property. That's belonging to the sovereign, which is the estate, owned by the Crown. So that's what's occurred. And if we go back here, so we can articulate this and quantify everything that's occurred. So there's the Land Transfer Act coming up here. And you'll probably find the same thing in legislation over there because it's near the same as what's here. Here's the Companies Act. Here we go. Disclaimer or property by the Crown. We disclaimed it. We abandoned our property, the estate. We gave it away by using the name of the estate of the dead deceased person on the birth certificate. Here we are. So it's held there at the Treasury as bona vacantia, ownerless property. The Secretary to the Treasury may by notice in writing disclaim the Crown's title to property vested in the Crown. See, you still own it, the Crown still owns it, but we've disclaimed it. That's what's happened from those agreements that we enter into every day through the Health Sector Transfer Act. Now, here's the Treasury. Now, let's go back to the Health Sector Transfer Act and we'll see. Okay, back.
So, Crown, while we're going through this,
yeah,
there's bound to be people that are looking at this and see the Crown all the time, and they think, well, isn't that the Queen? Aren't we talking about the Queen's stuff? Like, how do you know? Like, surely this is just the Queen's stuff. Or then there's some other people say, oh no, hang on, that's the Law Society. So how?
Yeah, I hear, and that's the big window shopping and distraction, because you know, she's proclaimed her rules and styles and titles, and she's exercising what everyone else can.
Well, so she's no better than any of us.
That's right.
That's funny.
It's just that we weren't privy to the code. You see?
Mm-hmm.
It's a big window distraction over there. Everyone thinks she's the Crown, taking the distraction off yourself that you are the Crown too.
Now, sometimes would it be correct as a way of getting into it, if you were to say, replace your name, like replace Crown with your name, and then read some of these acts and just say your name instead of Crown, and some of them would make more sense?
Okay, so it's the name that has enslaved us.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But like when you think of yourself,
yeah.
Like, I mean, so put yourself in there, however you want to do that, if you give yourself a label or you don't.
I'll show you how it's been performed, okay? And every country has the constitution, eh?
Yeah, I suppose, I'll just put it back. I had a conversation with two sheriffs one day when a friend of mine lost his property. Yeah. And we were talking to them, and how I was able to get them to see something different was saying, when you read legislation, and whenever it refers to the Crown, think of that as being you. Yep. So when you read it, that's you. The Crown is you, and now see if it makes more sense. Have you ever seen the Queen in a court of law? And I said, no.
That's right.
All right. I said, so start thinking that back way, because this is a sort of like like almost mind control that people are under. When you say the word Crown, you see that woman and you see the money and all that sort of thing. It's a matter of trying to break that.
Okay. So imagine this. They're using your name to disguise your royal styles and titles that you should be proclaiming.
Okay. So we're all kings and queens for argument's sake.
No, the royal styles and titles is in relation to your estate.
Mm-hmm.
The only individual that's living and that owns that estate is the Crown. Mm-hmm. But in here, we're talking about, this is our constitution over here. Your constitution over there, it's split in two. Crown in one, the 1900 Act, and the recent one, Australian Act, has the sovereign in there. So they've separated it. But over here, we're talking about regency. So where under the law of the United Kingdom, the royal functions, and when we're talking about royal functions, we're talking about banking, are performed in the name. So they're using the name to disguise who you really are on behalf of the sovereign by a region. The royal functions of the sovereign right of New Zealand shall be performed in the name on behalf of. This is how the hidden our true identity behind the name that we're using when we should be proclaiming our royal styles and titles in article in section 2. The sovereign right of New Zealand is the head of state of New Zealand and shall be known by the royal styles and titles proclaimed from time to time. It doesn't say proclaim names. So who you really are is hidden behind the name. The name is what's barring you from accessing your estate and your inheritance. You see what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
The name is what's causing you injury. Because we haven't proclaimed our royal styles and titles. You just saw back there under the Land Transfer Act where the Crown has disclaimed his estate. And it's saying in the Constitution we have to proclaim. What was disclaimed must be proclaimed. You can't use the name. We have royal styles and titles that only the Crown can proclaim to inherit his titles and his royal styles and titles, which is his state. That's what's going on here. And it starts back with those agreements. Every agreement you enter into, you're disclaiming your estate every time you enter into an agreement, which gives them the administration over that disclaimed estate, which is the name, which is the agent, the agency that they're operating through on their end, making claims and accessing your estate that you've disclaimed because you haven't stood up as the Crown. Does that make sense? It's a complicated, you've got to look at it in four-dimensional, otherwise you can't see it.
Yeah, it almost doesn't seem like it could be legal.
Well, it's straight out of the Bible. I'm telling you, it's straight out of the Bible.
Yeah.
Everything that's enacted is straight out of the Bible. That's why you have church and state.
So, well, what about the people who don't believe in the Bible? They can just go away and live how they want and don't have to worry about any of this.
Well, a lot of people ain't worried about this. They just go with the flow and they comply. But the ones who are waking up, they've been woken up for a reason.
Yeah.
There's less of us and there's many of them.
So I think it's important when we look at this that in spite of our own personal beliefs, the people that are in control have got certain beliefs, and we need to take stock in what those beliefs are because they're in control. They're administering over us. And so we're subject to their whims, regardless of whether it's correct or not. So, yeah. But if we do this and we're Crown, but if I want to go into court, or I don't want to go into court at all, but why can't I just proclaim that I'm a man or I'm a woman? Why can't I do that?
Okay, I'll show you why. Here we go. Where is it? Let me find it. Okay. Because the man is actually the manifestation of the name. Just a moment. Just got to find something here.
That's okay. So one of the things that I've seen, like, is that if there's no man or there's no woman in the legislation, which is sort of what I was talking about before. So in a way, you're a fiction. You don't exist.
The man and the woman's definitely in there, but it's all part of the straw man. See, you can't have a straw man unless you got a man.
Uh-huh.
The man is the straw man. Oh, here we go. Is this it? Okay. I'll just share this.
Okay, once we've shared this, we'll take a question. We'll take a question. So
okay, so everything that's been enacted in legislation is mirrored from out of the Bible, and if you look at the process of colonization, they sent the church in first to introduce everyone to the Bible, the Gospel, the Word, Genesis 1 and we're talking about Genesis and the New Testament, Old Testament, New Testament, in relation to in the beginning. And you'll see what's in the House Sector Transfer Act is a mirror image of Genesis 1 and John 1 in the New Testament. That's the code, source code. But when we're talking about what they did was they went, in Matthew 28:19, they talk about, go ye therefore and teach all nations. You know the law of nations?
mm-hmm.
The nativity of the birth of a person. That's what nations about. Persons, law of nations, international law.
Land of the dead.
Land of the dead. Baptizing them in the name. You know, the practice of baptism is not about the water. We were baptized with a name. That's what we were baptized with the name of the Father. There's your family name. And of the Son, there's your given name. And of the Holy Ghost. Well, who's the Holy Ghost in that relationship? Go back to the House Sector Transfer Act and you'll see who the Holy Ghost is. It's the crown. Because you didn't know you were the crown, so he's the Holy Ghost. So through that process there is how they bound us all and captured everyone in the name. So it says in the Constitution we have to proclaim our royal styles and titles. Proclaim, because we disclaim the estate that's in the name. So by that process there, and we have an amen at the end of that. Psalms 149:8, to bind their kings with chains and their nobles with fetters of iron. So that name of the Father and the Son, which are the kings and queens, his or her majesty, are bound in chains. All in the name. Matthew 6:33, but seek ye first the kingdom of God. See, this is the first commandment in the whole Bible, is they tell you to first seek the kingdom. Is that proclaiming your royal styles and titles? To claim your estate that's in the name? And his righteousness, and all things shall be added unto you. When you proclaim that was disclaimed. James 1:12, blessed is the man that endures temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life. The only living thing in this relationship is the crown. The crown. You saw in the House Sector Transfer Act, the crown is the settler of the trust, the grantor. And further down, you'll see that he is the transferor and the transferee. This is what is hidden from everyone. And every agreement. which the Lord has promised to them that love him. Revelations 2:10, fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Everyone's suffering, are they not? The word suffer means they have allowed. They have allowed this to happen to them because they are using the name. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison. That's what's happening. That ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I'll give thee a crown of life. That's why you have to proclaim that you're the crown.
Mm-hmm. So that really sort of sheds a light on the crown as a totally different thing than thinking of the Queen.
Yes. She's just doing everything that everyone else can do in their own capacity.
Okay.
Individually.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Now, I do have a question here. We might give you a break from, or this might actually, who knows what this might do. So I'll ask the Eagle to unmute yourself, please.
Hi, Crown. Hi, everyone. Crown, don't disappear on me.
When he speaks, he'll pop up.
Show your face. I've got a question that might test you out, and hopefully other people will get something out of it. I'm in the process of selling my house. It's under contract. There's 3 lots of monies that are released, the final one completing the settlement as such. So just to illustrate or to create a real life scenario of what you're saying, between now and the settlement, the government or the corporation acting as government could come along and take my property, and I have nowhere to stand because I've signed it as my legal fiction rather than Crown. Is that correct? I can't hear you, Crown.
You're muted.
Crown's muted.
Yeah, no, he's got to fix that himself.
And that's the struggle that everyone's having, is protecting their assets and their wealth. Because at any time they can be pulled away from you by the banks, by the local government, by the ATO, by any means if they choose to. But when you understand the relationship between the Crown and your person, which is an estate in fee simple, and tenants in common. See, in that agreement, you didn't realize that you were the Crown, and you granted yourself an estate in fee simple as tenants in common. Who's the other tenant in that agreement?
Sure.
It was the Crown.
So the answer is yes, they could come along and sweep it now between now and settlement?
Yes, and it has happened to many people.
Right, yeah. Right, okay, well, let's presume that doesn't happen. Once the settlement's completed and I have monies there to then go on and purchase the property, can I trouble you to talk me through how I would secure that purchase, so in the manner that you've just illustrated?
Well, you would have to find within the legislation over there'd be something similar to the House Sector Transfer Act. And knowing how to correctly secure the property as the Crown.
You can't tell me how to do that.
I'll show you the relationship in relation to that relationship on that title. And it's in, I shared it last time in relation to the Lodial title. You know, everyone's trying to get the Lodial title.
How do you spell that, Crown?
Lodial, the A-L-L-O-D-I-U-M, allodium. That's the highest title to land that's only held by the Crown. Now the Crown, through those agreements, are creating estates in fee simple, which is a license and a lease to occupy. That's all everyone has. Through that estate in fee simple as tenants in common on those titles of those properties that you are paying a mortgage on.
So if I might ask a question relative to this, and I don't know if you can answer it. So in your experience, in your opinion, what levels of government or the legal system are aware of this knowledge? How far down does it trickle?
Good question.
Probably the senior barristers. Politicians wouldn't know. Chartered accountants, not accountants.
A chartered accountant?
Probably would. Yep.
Because they're contracted, aren't they?
Yes, they're contracted to ATO.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're not actually working for you.
No, not at all.
So every agreement you enter into, like I was showing you the elements of every agreement, unless you put restrictions and prohibitions in those agreements as the Crown, then you secure that. Because you're creating that agreement, you don't realise it. You're creating those funds, you didn't realise it. But you're disclaiming it by not identifying yourself as the Crown.
Okay. So
Yeah,
now let me put this to you. This might, it might not even be appropriate, but it might enlighten some people. How can you come forward with all this knowledge about the Crown and you're educating us this way, but then you can say straight up that you don't have a way to purchase a property as the Crown, or there's certain things that you can't do as the Crown? Why are there such limitations there? I think I know the answer already, so I don't think it's an unfair question, but I want people to be able to realise what we're actually participating in when we're talking here, because this is sort of a beginning, isn't it?
It's the beginning of a new world. The beginning of a new world, because a lot more people are articulating themselves as the Crown and using legislation and giving them notice that they are the Crown. I've corrected my personal information with certain government agencies. Wins over here, your equivalent to Centrelink pays my benefit to me as Crown. Got a photo ID for Crown. So not all the agencies will acknowledge that, because they will tip the system over. The cat's out of the bag. So since a lot more people have been using that information, they've had to shut the whole system down, and that's what this whole COVID thing is about.
So how long ago did the Crown first start to bubble out?
Well, it came to a head in March. And certain actions were done over here, and their response was initiated in the first week, where they went straight to level 4. As we were to leave the country, they locked us in.
Mm-hmm.
But the virus had already got out. The Crown is the virus. They're having to give disclosure that, yes, you are the Crown. You just got to break down the word. See, they're using COVID-19 in legislation to say coronavirus.
Yeah.
Corona is Crown. And Y is number 6, Roman numerals. 6, that's the 6th estate. 666, which is the number of man, the estate. R is for region or Rex, royal, and that's us.
Okay. Now, the purpose for this meeting, because we haven't known each other a long time, we've had some good conversations along the way, and you've come to the realisation that we all need to move forward with this, and the application of our very existence as Crown needs to be undertaken by a number of people so that we can attack it on a number of fronts. Because there's so many different areas of legislation that affect us and affect the Crown, and it would be impossible for one man or woman or a small group of 5 or 6 to develop all the remedies we need in relation to all the aspects of Crown. So that's why we need more and more people to deal with the issues that everybody has. We need to be able to sort of form teams and study further.
Now, at that time when they introduced the COVID in New Zealand, we were using the Privacy Act 1996, And while myself and my colleague were down in Wellington addressing these issues to all these Crown entities, they changed the Privacy Act, because all the paperwork that we put in was relating to the Privacy Act 1993. And while we were down there, they changed it. So we know that the Privacy Act is our armor, our protection. So that PDF, I just cut and paste all the sections out of the Privacy Act in Australia, 1988, and how it connects to the the Fair Work Act, 2009, where they had the adverse action. So if everyone has downloaded that and get familiar with that, that will show you your protection and the nature of the relationship between yourself and all the agency where they're acting through your person. They've added a new feature on the end of your person, which is another agency, and it's the coronavirus. They just tagged another unit on the end of the train just to distract you. So if I just open up the, if I share the screen and go into that, oh, where is it? Okay. Has everyone downloaded it and opened it up? Right. Here we go. Okay. This should give you some level of protection if you apply it in the proper contents of yourself being the Crown through all these agencies to give yourself that protection. So this protection I'm talking about, you'll find in the Bible. It talks about God's armor, and it's quite when you cross-reference what's in there, you'll see it in the Privacy Act. So it's a Commonwealth Act, which overarches all the state acts, say, all the federal ones. Was it federal or state? So in the Privacy Act, the object of this act to promote protection. You want protection? Here it is. It's in the Privacy Act. Of the privacy of individuals. Now, don't get fooled by the word individual. That's your straw man. So they're protecting your individual, which is the privacy information. Protection. So you got this, so you can go through it in your own time, in your own mind, to see the relationship. Especially when we get down to the sections there where the Act binds the Crown. Now, in the legislation in Australia, they do have the sovereign right of Australia. Not in many acts, but it's there. There's your level of protection. What they need is your name, which is your personal information, which is the individual, to create statements, contracts, agreements. This is an act to bind the Crown. Here's the Crown. In this act, see, I was saying before, the relationship might be different in another act, So in this act, it's telling you the relationship. So this act binds the Crown in right of the Commonwealth. There's your Commonwealth of each of the states. Now, a state can also represent an e-state. E-state states of the Australian Capital Territories and of the Northern Territories. So this, your status within this act. So when you're going to address any public official, this is what you've got to tell them. Nothing in this act renders the Crown and right of the Commonwealth or of a state of Australian Capital Territory or any of the Northern Territory liable to prosecution for an offence. Here's your rights. 3, nothing in this act shall be taken to have the effect of making the Crown and right of a state of the Australian Capital Territory or the Northern Territory an agency for the purposes of this act. It's your agent and all the agencies acting through the individual. The personal information is the individual, is your name on the birth certificate that you keep giving to them all the time to give them jurisdiction. So you're disclaiming your estate by using the name. So what they are requesting when they asking for your name is the information of the credit provider, the mortgage insurer, and trade insurer. That's why they ask for your name. So it's called an information privacy request or information request. Over here, it's a privacy information request. Over there, it's an information request. So when they come to you and they ask for your name, you say, is this an information request under the Privacy Act 1993? You're activating your protections when you quote that. Oh, 1988, yeah.
Thank you.
So the script's all in this PDF. It's relevant to you guys over there. Yeah?
So excuse me, Crown. You just said then that here in Australia, it's not so much a privacy information request, but just an information request. Is that correct?
Yes. Now you can elaborate more on that information request because they're just in that requesting your name, they are getting access to 3 different things. The credit provider. See, your person provides the credit.
Mm-hmm.
Credit provider. Mortgage insurer and trade insurer. All of this is operating with your name, but when you use the name, you're giving them access to the account and making you liable, which belongs to the Crown, and the Crown is the one who's exempt. But the Crown keeps giving the personal information away. You see what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, so when they're asking you for your name, you know now that answering a request, I'll just put it in here, answering a request by the policeman, you should be asking the question, is this a credit provider or a mortgage insurer or a trade insurer information request under Privacy Act 1988? Yes or no? Because that's what they want access to. The Crown is protected.
So, but a policeman's not going to know that, is he?
Here's your script.
But the policeman himself, he's not going to know that.
He doesn't even know this himself because he's operating under the Policing Act.
So that'd be a good thing that if you were to do that, that would be good if you had a recording of that.
So even more to the point, once everyone gets familiar with this, you make a complaint to the Privacy Commissioner. Just make the complaint now because it's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait for it to happen. Everyone starts making a complaint to the Privacy Commissioner because of this is what's going on.
Now, if we were to do that, is there any advantage to doing that in numbers on one piece of paper, or is it better to do it in numbers with separate pieces of paper? Like an individual complaint as opposed to a group complaint?
Individually, you could all put it in as a collective complaint, as a class action. So
we could do both?
Yes. As long as you identify yourself correctly through those agencies to direct your agent to give them, to make the complaint.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just pulled out all the protections and what's going on. So they want your personal information because of those three things. And it's causing that interference with privacy. They're interfering with your privacy. They want your personal information.
So,
And
for example, for the people in Victoria that are locked up, which is definitely an interference with their privacy.
Oh, yes.
So if we could get people to take action as Crown.
Yes. Interference with privacy. So these are the key words. The information request, interference with privacy, and it's telling you what's happening with this interference with privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Protection against civil action in the Privacy Act here. Protection from civil action, which is causing an adverse action, and they have hidden that part in the Fair Works Act.
So, for argument's sake, Daniel Andrews, or is that his name? Whatever, because he's at work doing his job and he's causing people distress, and he's interfering with their privacy, probably making people feel bad, which I don't think you can do under the Fair Works Act, can you?
That's right. But you've got to understand who's the employer and the employee in this relationship. See, your person is your agent, the individual, the personal information is your employee, and you're the employer as the Crown. You've employed an agent to act on your behalf, accessing that personal information, which is your agent, and you are giving it away freely, not identifying yourself as the Crown. So this is where they tagged on the COVID on the end of that train. Now, in this section here, where the adverse action is where the link is to take you to the Fair Works Act. But this is where they tagged on the COVID safe, the COVID data store, which is still your person. They're after your COVID information.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the adverse action. You see the adverse action, and it's connected to the Fair Works Act here. That's what links the Privacy Act to the Fair Works Act through this link here. So it's a matter of knowing how to traverse the legislation as well. The easiest thing when you go into any act, put Crown in there. If it's in there, you'll see the Crown acting in all its capacities, and then how it links to other acts where all your protections are. Mm-hmm. So in the Privacy Act, there's the link to the Fair Works Act, right? Here's the Fair Works Act. It's another act binds the Crown in each of its capacities. You know, in each of those capacities are all those agencies. In each of its capacities. However, this act does not make the Crown liable to be prosecuted for an offence. You got to stand your ground as the Crown, or to exercise those protections and those rights. Privileges and immunities. Has privileges and immunities of the Crown. So they're using your privileges and immunities because you have disclaimed the estate as the Crown. The FWC has privileges and immunities of the Crown and right of the Commonwealth. It's the mean of adverse action. This is what they're doing through interference of privacy, inducing you to provide your personal information. These are all the actions that are being exercised on you or your employee, which is your individual, which is your personal information, which is the name that you keep providing, which is an employee of the employer, which is the Crown. So I put it up there, download it, get familiar with it, and start speaking it and walking it. This is all the armor of God that they provide in the Bible, exercising it now.
So you're sort of requesting or suggesting to people that they should actually do some work themselves.
Well,
Why should I have to do work if I want to be free? Can't you just do it all for me and I'll copy it?
no, it doesn't work that way.
There's good stuff on telly, mate.
You got to walk.
Maybe the football's on. Maybe the football's on. I want to watch the football.
Well, when they come knocking at the door and they want to adversely affect you, what do you do?
As long as they don't bump the satellite dish, mate, I don't care.
Well, people are living in fear because they don't want to rock the boat, so they comply.
Well, hang on. If you go and do it first, then I'll follow you. How about that?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of them.
Yeah. So the message that we're getting here is the information. You're a master of your own destiny, and go through this because we can help each other because of the amount of work that you've done and what you're bringing to us, but it doesn't mean you've got the answer to every problem that arises. You may have a philosophy, a logic to attack it, but it doesn't mean that you can't even actually do it. Like, how many acts and statutes are there that for one man or one group to attack? And that's why we all need to be able to be together, to work independently, then combine. So we together can form a body of work that enables us to be free and to help free other people. Because all the time, there's always going to be people that can't participate with this for one reason, like a valid reason. And we can help them. But for argument's sake, everybody in this room has got to look at participating with this, getting a working knowledge of it and providing your own solutions. And we can do that in groups, like 4 or 5 people is good. You can have more, but 4 or 5 can get a lot done.
Hey, have a Crown Freedom Day. Set up Crown groups.
So we should start spreading the word Crown around.
Yes. Start role-playing with each other, Here's all your protections and your rights that everyone's fighting for, but they don't know where they are or how to apply them.
Well, you could even do that through the live stream on Facebook with Zoom meeting with your friends. And the only thing you got to be prepared to be is wrong. Like, have a go, make a mistake, and hopefully someone within your group can say, you said the wrong thing there, or you contracted in there, whatever it is. Just be prepared to be wrong.
Now, every act that they are doing on you, or every act that they've created that's an act of bind the crown, is automatically by default interference with privacy, causing an adverse action. So straight away, by default, everyone should just put a complaint into the Privacy Commissioner because that act that they're operating under is causing you adverse action through that interference with privacy.
So if we were going to put in a complaint like that, and without saying, like, so you haven't formulated one, but do you have, like, how long would it be? Like, how many pages does it need to be? 10 pages or 5 or 2 or 1?
Well, just get familiar with these 13 pages that's been cut and pasted out of those 2 acts. Take out the key sections out of there to consolidate it, address it to the right people in the right contents of where they are as the agent, and send it by registered mail to the commissioner, the Privacy Commissioner.
So we're identifying the parties. We're identifying the parties that are traversing, as far as they're creating the injury, if you like, or the adverse action. So we'd only have to identify one action per person. So we identify one body as committing 5 different things, but we could make 5 separate complaints, couldn't we?
Imagine making a complaint against every act that they're using against you. If it's an act to bind the crown, it's causing you interference with privacy and adverse action.
Yeah.
So you cover the whole range.
So you're saying you cover the whole range within one document, or do it with separate documents? One document.
One document. You can, every act to bind the crown is an adverse action. Even this act here that binds the crown is an adverse action.
Mm-hmm.
It's the action that's adverse.
Okay, now just have a look from the other side. If we put one claim on that complaint that it's wrong, is it possible that that can void our whole paper, our whole document, or would they just strike one element from it?
Well, they don't exist without those acts in place.
I understand what you're saying, but let's say we get it wrong. Let's say we make a mistake. And we misapply it or whatever. What I'm looking at, how many errors can you have in your paperwork before your paperwork is not going to be considered?
Okay, yeah. Constructing the document.
Yeah, yeah. So you get what I'm talking about, don't you? It's,
so,
it's effectively, it's sort of a lie. If you make a mistake, you're making a false claim.
So that's why I introduced you to Health Sector Transfer Act in relation to every agreement. There's your blueprint, your template to construct that document, right? And within the, further down, if I just, so everyone can see all that, there's your protection, there's discrimination, everything there, yeah?
Yeah.
Protection again. A person must not take adverse action against another person because of that other person. So there's all the elements for protection under the Privacy Act and the Fair Works Act. But if we go back to the, where are we? I'll just jump out. Back to that Health Sector Transfer Act, which has all the elements of every agreement. I haven't found your, I think I've found your version over there, but you know, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. So I'll just go back. Here's the Health Sector Transfer Act. So if you use that as a guideline, this is all the elements within every agreement or document you're going to put together, identifying who created the document, what it creates, and protecting all your assets here. That affects all your predecessors in title. That's your father, his father, go all the way back. This is how far they're being, what they've been utilizing is all your heritage through your predecessors in title, your ancestors.
So would it be true that because they've already collected our predecessors, our ancestors, that by virtue of that, anything that comes from that, they also already own? That's
right. That's right. That's right. See, this contract that you didn't know about has been in existence for a long time.
Yeah.
So this is what's been transferred, and there's the B, confer estates and fee simple. So that name is the estate and fee simple, held by the Crown. So, you know, when you gave that name over to them, you were holding it, weren't you? But you didn't realize you were the Crown. Whether in a lodium or otherwise. See, the lodium title is only exercisable by the Crown, but the Crown is conveying estates and fee simple every time he gives that personal information of that individual in that name. That what was being conveyed, your credit provider, your mortgage insurer, your trade insurer. That's what's being conveyed in every time you give your personal information of that individual in that name. This is what's happening.
So the value connected to your birth certificate is what's guaranteeing them of cover.
Yes, yes, exactly. So the Crown in every transaction agreement is the transferor, the transferor. And see how the Crown is acting, whether or not acting through a government department. They're all the agencies.
Mm-hmm.
The Crown is acting through a government department.
So when we say it's our government, we don't actually realise that as Crown, it is our government.
That's right.
But if you're not Crown, it's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So within the agreement here, down the bottom here, they refer to transfer or authorise. See, every time you give the name, you're doing a transfer and you're doing authorisation. Just by giving the name, because the contract's already written.
Mm-hmm.
It's hidden right here in front of you. You just didn't know it. So when you go write that agreement on that blank piece of paper, here's the terms and conditions to that contract. Hidden administration.
Okay. So now all of these links that you've provided us, haven't you? People have just got to download them? The parent documents.
Yeah, I'll put the privacy one together for you guys over there because of what's going on.
Yep.
The health sector, I just got to find this part in legislation over there in Australia so that you know all the elements of every agreement that you enter into or how to put that agreement together. Now, if you look down the bottom here at section 4, this is what has to be in the agreement. Unless a written agreement entered into by the Crown states that any restriction, these are the key words over here anyway, prohibition or other provisions is to apply despite the provisions of this subsection, this act shall have effect. If you don't put those things into the agreement, these conditions in this agreement will have effect.
Mm-hmm.
You see what's going on? So it's very important how you structure your agreements with these hidden terms and conditions. This act shall have effect and assets and liabilities may be transferred under this act, notwithstanding any restriction, prohibition, or other provisions contained in any act. Or any act. There's your Privacy and Fair Works Act. Rule of law or agreement that would otherwise apply. Nothing in this act shall limit any power or rights that the Crown or the minister or a minister, see, everything was transferred to the government or a minister has under any other enactment or rule of law. This is how you exercise your rights in that agreement when you use the right elements.
Now, just as Crown's going through that, I'll just put out, if anybody does have a question, apart from Jared. No, it's all right, Jared. You beat me. You actually beat me to that. So Jared's got a question, so we'll give you a break from that train of thought for the moment, Crown.
Yeah.
Jared, if you could unmute yourself.
Okay, so I've got up to the buyer. He's selling the property. The last thing I want to do is transfer the funds through the straw man bank account to, because then they can make a case against me. So I've signed as Crown. I want to give him gold or something like that, where I say the Crown has given the gold as payment, and not some straw man through through some contract where they can try and bring a claim against the Crown. Is that right?
Well, once you see all the elements of the agreement is operating through their statement fee simple, which is the conveyancing agent, but it all depends who signs the agreement, doesn't it? And whatever restrictions you put into it. See, every agreement, especially when we're talking about sales and purchase agreements for property, you can add your own terms and conditions, can't you? Or you can strike out some of those terms and conditions that affect you.
So you can negotiate the agreement.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thanks for that. That answers my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Jared. Okay. So there's a bit of quiet. Does anybody else have a question, or we're just having a little bit of a rest? Okay, Daniel.
Yeah, Crown. I know how we're talking about we're purchasing a property and you're signing that legal document. You know you're going to be forced to put your fictitious name on there, aren't you? What name would you actually put on the legal document?
The sales and purchase agreement over here in New Zealand allows you to put a nominee. And from my own investigation, I've identified within that sales and purchase agreement, when you look at the terms and conditions, the provisions are already in there for the property or the mortgage to be discharged. You got to have a look in the terms and conditions of the agreement and understand with the relationship going on in there. Now you know you're the Crown. I've identified 3 ways that agreement is being used to purchase property. But all those agreements in New Zealand is all controlled by the New Zealand Law Society through the Real Estate Society. So the Bar Association will always have control of those agreements.
So you're saying there's an opportunity to put Crown on the document?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay, now, so do you put Crown with your name, like say Crown acting through the straw man, or is it in a separate field?
I haven't had a look at the type of agreements that you have over there, but
Well, for example, just look at what you're familiar with. How would you do it on your form? So you've got a nominee.
well, you got to look at our terms and our sales and purchase agreements over here.
Yep.
It's totally different to what you have over there.
Yeah.
So I can't give any advice on how to fill your fellows one in.
Well, I don't think you're actually giving any of us any advice. We're just chatting.
Yeah.
When it comes down to that. So well, no, I'll put you on the spot.
But I'll give you some advice in relation to what happened to me.
Okay.
The general way of how people purchase property gone to the real estate agent, signed up for a sales and purchase agreement for this property, went to my solicitor, went to his house. He had prepared all the paperwork, right? I turned up early at his house and all the documents were in a pile on his desk and he scattered them all over the desk. I thought that was a bit strange. And then he got me pointed out, oh, sign this one here, sign that one there. And I thought something was totally wrong with this because I've been through this before. And then I demanded a copy of all the documents. Later on, I realized that there was one document that he didn't get me to sign. This is before you even go to the bank. Now, this one document was already filled in, just needed to be signed. And it was the discharge form.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's got me onto a lot of this that I'm expressing to you now from that one event.
So that would be the one that would be important to have the Crown endorse.
If you requested the discharge form.
Mm. But you're saying it already exists when you're
It already
purchasing the property.
existed. It already existed. You just didn't know that it was there to be requested. He had already filled it in.
So is it possible that there's another organisation that fills that out on your behalf? Because it's a bit like when we talk about if you go into court, that the Crown's always there, but if you're not there in your as Crown, somebody else is in your seat. So is it possible that somebody else decides to say, well, you didn't fulfil your role as Crown, so I will, and we'll take the value?
The solicitor.
Mm-hmm.
Solicitor, the courts, the police, prosecutor, they are all part of the Crown Law Office in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
So because we've disclaimed the estate, they've stepped in as the administrator, as the Crown entity, as the agent on behalf of the Crown.
So do you think if we really started thinking, when we look at these things that are set up like the Crown Law Agency, for example, and you sort of think, oh, well, that represents the Queen. Well, because that's what people think, well, that represents the Queen. But if you started looking at what they actually do, you go, oh, well, maybe they're doing that instead of the Queen, because the Queen can't do it, so they're just acting as her agent.
Here's a simple answer to that. This act binds the Crown. Why is it binding on you then?
Yeah, okay.
If that's your argument.
That's not a bad question.
Yeah. If
So
this act binds the Crown, why are you charging me?
Okay, so this is what I put out to the audience at large, or the participants at large. If you can work out a way to disqualify what Crown is saying, please do. Bring it forth. Because this isn't a matter of like, come and join this club because this is a better club. We just want to be free. And we're searching through this myriad of bullshit, right, that's been created so that we can't see what's going on. So, and there's no point, I've always said to people, you can always find reasons why you can prove what you want to do is correct. But how about you prove it wrong? Because that is when you're really correct. So now that we've got this information here for the doubters, or people who say, well, no, this isn't it. Why isn't it it? Let's have a look. Let's pull it apart from the other side to make sure we're not going down a wrong path. Because as you can see, you're here tonight. It's cost you nothing except your time to participate. No one's trying to drag any money out of your pocket. No one's trying to get you to go and join a club. The cult part comes later on, but that's after a few more meetings when we've got you well and truly roped in. But at this point, it's free. So what I'm suggesting that you do, don't go out proving what Crown has said is correct. Go out and try and prove it wrong. Really have a look at getting, and all you got to do is go to Consolidated Acts, do a word search, a specific word search on Crown, find it, try and find something somewhere where you can go, aha, that's what everything he's just said, it's just been pulled apart because this is wrong, it doesn't work here, or whatever. But bring some evidence through. So that's one of the ways that I've gone through when I've really tried to research something is, because some things you really want to believe, and then you'll only see what supports your case. So prove it wrong. Now, Kim's had his hand up for a little while. If you want to unmute yourself there, Kim.
I was just going through my contract, and even in my contract it says council recommends contacting the Native Title Tribunal, Environmental Protection Agency, Queensland and National Estates directly to search for their respective register for information regarding the native title issue on your property. So, you know, and I was wondering about native title as to the way Crown's going. So, you know, because we talked about native title and turning our property into native title before, didn't we?
It already is.
Yeah, well, it is. Well, Mabo turned it over, didn't it? So, you know, but, you know, and then if you look at that Treasury Island, I think I sent it to you. It basically, you know, pins different states with different islands. So, yeah, I'm at a loss to know what's really happening there, you know. So, and then, you know, with Victoria the way it's going, and China building that bloody island off their coast, I'm wondering if they're trying to do the same ploy that the English did with Australia. So, do you know what I'm talking about with that Treasury Island? Justinian deception.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just have a look at that Treasury Island anyway. I'll put the link up again, but because they work it on Lord Howe Island and another one that owns, you know, they can. Yeah, go on.
Norfolk Island, is it?
Yeah, Norfolk Island, and they trade. They basically using Australia as a cash cow through them, and they actually state them as Australia. So in Treasury Island, I'll put it up. It's worth a look, because, you know, when you look at China building that island, and then the play in Victoria there, it sort of makes me wonder what they're up to. You know, what are they trying to do? What the Pommies done? You know, like, but Victoria's under some other island, different to Queensland. So, yeah, I'd have to look at it again, but I'll put it up anyway. That's all I wanted to say. I want to know about native title.
So, Crown's muted. He might be having a rest. Now, something that I did, I looked up people familiar with etymology online, and what I suggest that you look up is this terra nullius, where they say they claimed the land and there was no people on the land. I call bullshit. Now, if you look up the etymology of the word and you look up terra nullius, it comes with nullus, it means nothing, right? It's nil, it's nothing. Now, there's legal terms that say, oh no, this is what it means. But you get back to the etymology of the world, they claimed nothing. They've done nothing wrong. They didn't claim anything. And then there's this bullshit, but there's this garbage story about saying, oh, there was nobody on the land. And we know there was people on the land anyway, so that's wrong. But the etymology, go to the word, look it up, it means nothing. So, and I've said that for ages and ages, that they claim nothing, so they've done nothing wrong. Everything is an assumption from that point on. So there's nothing real in this legal system.
Well, that's why I think there's some substance to what the Treasure Island's talking about, because, yes. I mean, they are using, well, where's all our money from our resources and everything going, you know? I mean, apart from the, you know, Club of Rome and people like that, but, you know, where's it all going? And it's certainly not paying our bloody taxes, so we don't have to pay them.
No, not at all.
I'll put that link up anyway.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Now, we're getting close to where it's 9:17, and I'll endeavour to finish the evening by 9:30. So if anybody has any questions, if you could bring that forward now. Okay, there's one. Crown Style, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, g'day.
How you going?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, just want to ask a separate question to everything you're asking. We are looking at trying to pull our children out of the current education system and actually homeschool them, but they're all trying to bound us to this HE rubbish, and I'm trying to sit there and use my Crown position to get around it so I can knock them on the head. Anyone have any ideas?
Crown.
Yeah, I got that one done. I got my PPSR done now.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, no, I'm asking Crown to contribute.
Oh, right.
well
I
done.
don't want to say his actual name.
That enrollment at the doctors is what gives you jurisdiction over everything, even your children, through all those agencies. It's your enrollment at the doctors that require your children to be in school. It's your enrollment at the doctors that where ATO is going to tax you. All those things that are affecting you is through their agreement, through the enrollment at the primary health organization that funds the World Health Organization and the World Bank. It's your enrollment at the doctors. The doctor sees you in and he sees you out. And you trust the doctor to tell you and to protect, you look after your health. How do you know that when he sees you got the cancer or diabetes or like that is real?
Yeah.
That's what's affecting your children, and their jurisdiction over you is your enrollment at the doctors.
Okay, how do I pull it out then?
Well, this is what I've had to do. I've looked at the different agreements that each doctor, when you move from one state to another or one district to another, you re-enroll, right? And when you re-enroll, you're transferring your assets, liabilities, and rights. Now, in every agreement, in every form that you fill in, it actually provides all the spaces there to put the correct information in there. Just like you saw in that Health Sector Transfer Act,
Yes.
those restrictions in there and those prohibitions, your terms and conditions about what's going to happen with your assets, liabilities, and rights as the Crown.
Okay, so I'll have to hit them with the adverse action and then ask for extract my information directly out of them then.
Or under the Privacy Act, they do give you the right to correct your personal information.
That's right, you're correct.
Yes.
I remember that. Yes.
Correct your personal information because you've given them wrong information to begin with. Allow them to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Now, I just posted a link in regards to searching the Consolidated Acts under Austerley Custom Classic. I posted that. That's the easiest one to look through, to use, to search within all the acts.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Okay. Now, the native title, I just put up a document. If I can share the screen, I posted it there in regards to the nativity of the birth of a person. The person is the native title. So here we go. So I just posted that for all your consideration because this is what they've created right back in 1767 is this person. And every time you use that person's name, you get what's in this act. So basically, when you use that deceased person's name, you're an idiot, lunatic, and a fool. And you're under mental health.
That would mean you're really nice.
You're under mental health. When you enroll at the doctors and you provide the wrong information, you're under mental health. So have a look at that, and that's what, when we're talking about native and all those other derivatives of the word native, Aboriginal, all those other connotations of the person, it's referring to the nativity of the birth of a person.
When you say that, Crown, Indigenous is no original jurisdiction gene contract. That's what that means. No original jurisdiction gene contract. Indigenous.
So have a read of this document here, then I'll put everything into perspective when you keep using that name. Native title. Now they, over here in New Zealand, because this is the source of all law, one of the settlements, treaty settlements, was in relation to the unextinguished native title. And the ruling was their native title was unextinguished. So they're maintaining the straw man through that native title. That's the straw man.
Now, just to bring that into perspective, but from another angle, could you explain to people briefly how the term Maori came into being and the significance of that?
When referring to the Maori, that wasn't in the 1835 Declaration, but was in the Treaty of Waitangi, which they, at a public meeting, at a public forum, got the people who were in attendance to mandate by their, by signing the document, wasn't actually to benefit our people. It was a treaty where the British subjects, the word Maori is the British subject.
Yeah, so Maori is like a legal construct.
It's a construct, yes. It's just another native title. The nativity or the birth of a person and all its derivatives operating in the name is the native.
So do you want to be referred to, do you like to be referred to as Maori?
No.
Okay. Now, the majority of Maoris, would they be offended if you suggested that they shouldn't refer to themselves as Maoris?
We're working on that.
Yeah, so the answer would be yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So they'll fight to maintain the fiction over themselves.
The worst thing about that is this, which affects all of you too. I'll show you. Share the screen. Wait a minute, I'll just...
While you're looking for that, Crown, I'm just putting a link into chat and people should explore this. This is the Information Privacy Commission. Excuse me. If you explore what they do in relation to privacy, and there's a real simple thing was I went in there with a friend of mine. We didn't even know it existed. We were there for we were in the wrong place for the wrong reason, whatever, and didn't even know they existed. But what they basically said to us was, if we were trying to get information from a corporation, like a government department or whatever, and we weren't successful, that we could pay them a fee, I think of around $37 or $38, something like that, and they would ask that organisation why they didn't answer our question. So it may be a tool that I haven't used it at all, but it may be a tool that you can use if you're having trouble getting certain information. So have a look at that and see if it's of any value. Now that one's for New South Wales. It's quite possible that there's ones in other states.
Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
These treaty settlements that they're going through over here have a global effect, and they're using that manufactured culture to maintain consent. And originally they referred to the people over there as Aboriginal natives. Then they introduced this word through the treaty, Maori, which represents the British subject. A British subject is a servant, a slave. Why would you want to be a British subject? During these treaty claims, they were making claims that we should have the same rights as British subjects. But we understand what they've done is, from where the source of all control is coming from, and certain things were done here, they what do you call it? Consolidated every country or every district, every territory, every country, every colony into one word, New Zealand.
So you're suggesting that there was a one world government like a long time ago. Where'd you get that idea?
Well, you just got to look at the evidence. It's called New Zealand.
Hmm.
You know, Christopher Columbus, discovered the New World under the doctrine of discovery. Well, they just used that, and what they were missing was where time begins.
Mm-hmm.
So they used the construct under that doctrine of discovery, under the East Indian Trading Company and all its subsidiaries, they're companies, by the way, Five Eyes, right down to the South Seas Fisheries, which was a subsidiary of that parent company. And they colonized New Zealand because it was the closest to time, to the timeline, international date line. So when you stand at the beginning of time, everything that goes behind you is subject to that jurisdiction.
Mm.
The doctrine, first in law, best in time, or best in time, best in law. All trading starts at New Zealand. So when we break down the word New Zealand, we're talking about the Holy See, the new sea land. You know, the Holy See or the Papal See. That's why they sent in the Church Missionary Society first. They set up first. That's why you got church and state. Everyone's attacking the government, but they have ministers in government, ministers of the church.
Hmm.
We weren't colonized by the government. We were colonized by the church. So if you want to take things further, you should be addressing a lot of these issues to the church, because the state doesn't exist without the church.
So when you say the church, is that a collective for all organised religion or a specific denomination?
If you look at any different religious denomination, where are they registered? To the state, are they not?
Mm-hmm.
So they're all part of the beast. But
So they're all coming under the one jurisdiction, is what you're saying?
One jurisdiction. But when we look at the two main players, we got the Roman Catholic Church and the breakaway, which was the Church of England, Anglican Church. Yeah?
Was that to give you a perception of choice?
Well, King Henry at the time wanted to marry another woman, so he created his own church, didn't he?
Ah, new rules needed.
Ah, yeah.
Okay.
That's why you got the Church of England, which is the Anglican Church, isn't it?
Hmm. They had to have a different angle on things.
Different angle, right?
Okay.
So the state or the government doesn't exist without the church administrating all those souls who are lost to the sea, the Holy See. The sea itself, the SEE, comes in many different combinations.
Yeah.
In the Bible, they talk about faith comes by hearing. Doesn't matter how it's written. If it sounds the same, it is the same.
Mm-hmm.
So you have independency. CE on the end of independence is the Church of England.
Okay.
It's an acronym for the Church of England. Now, everyone's fighting for their independence. A lot of these words are acronyms. They're all bits of words joined together to create a word. But when you break the word down, independence.
Mm.
Through the pen, you're in the den under the sea. And that comes with CY, that comes with CEA, and that comes with ZEE or ZEA. Still sounds the same, it's still the same thing.
Yeah, 2 plus 2.
The Holy See.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the See of paper, we're talking about the Holy See, the Papal See. The Papal See for the independency of the currency, for the of the lunacy and the idiocy. It's all controlled by the Holy See.
Oh, now I see.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So everyone's attacking the government. Hey, what about the church?
Okay. So now, Crown, I think we're going to finish off shortly. I've got one more question from Boris. So I'll ask Boris to unmute.
It's more of a statement than a question. I'm sort of getting a hang of what Crown is talking about, but just going back to you, Stephen, you were talking about terra nullis.
Yes.
Well, no one owns terra nullis. No one ever has. What they have done is they have created a description, an invisible legal description that you and everybody else confuses with the actual physical land. This in the same way that you confuse your name or you with your certificate that they use to trade you.
Yeah.
The same way that they, you know, when a farmer sells a bunch of fat steers, he sells them via a stock certificate instead of taking the stock to the market. He sells the certificates and then makes a delivery. So there's a distinction that you haven't, maybe you don't grasp. There is a description that is legally owned by the Crown or whoever, the patent holders, if you like, and then there is the land.
Yeah. So, but that's actually what I'm trying to say is that they claimed nothing. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's just straight back down to the words. There is no physical act that they did. They didn't take any land. No, they claimed nothing. So it's there is they don't own Australia, or they didn't claim Australia. They literally claimed nothing. They claimed a void. Like, yeah.
Wait a minute. They claimed a native title.
And the first world order, if you like, idea comes from 1300.
Native title through the nativity of the person. So here's 1947 Maori Purposes Act. 1947 they set up the United Nations, They moved the goalposts. You got native title, or the Mabo case. You got the unextinguished native title case over here, and here's it enacted. So all those different derivatives of a state and fee simple called a native title, they've changed it to the word Māori. So let me read it for everyone. Except as otherwise provided by this Act, all references to a native in any act, regulation, rule, bylaw, order, or other enactment, or in any contract, agreement, deed, instrument, application, license, notice, or other document whatsoever shall, unless inconsistent with the context, be hereafter read as reference to a Māori. Here's your native title. Your Aboriginal title is called a Māori. Except as otherwise provided by this Act, whenever the term native appears in any Act, that's any Act, regulation, rule, bylaw, order, or other enactment, or any contract, agreement, deed, instrument, application, license, notice, or other document as descriptive of any person. Your person is a Māori. Body, corporation, office, purpose, land, building, reserve, or place. That term shall, unless the is inconsistent with the context of the enactment or document, be hereafter read as the term Māori. So yeah, everyone's fighting for the native title over there. No, it's called a Māori title. See, they consolidated all those terms into one word, control from one source of control. So everyone that's using the name is a Māori. And they've captured all the districts, territories, and colonies under the word New Zealand. And everyone else is fighting for these titles that are relevant, because here's the controller right here. This is how cunning they are.
So tell me, Crown, we get enough people to exercise our rights as when we're born. Would your intention be to maintain this system but just comprehend it better? Or do you think we should devise a new one?
Oh, that's a big job, because this system is thousands of years old.
Mm.
It's, with this crown thing, it's the key, or the keyhole for you to pass through the eye of the needle.
Yeah.
To enter the kingdom in ones and twos. But once everyone's got the key, then we can all enter. The provisions are there within legislation for us to be able to traverse it.
Okay, and then I suppose once we've got a majority of people who are aware, well then, I suppose in one way laws are made to be broken. Not that these are laws, but we can change the playing field to a point as we go. But you couldn't just throw it all out and bring in a new system in one hit.
No.
Without facing economic collapse, whatever. Okay, so I've got a question from Daniel, and I've got one from Kim, and we'll finish off with Daniel. Go ahead, Kim.
On that video, they're talking about birth certificates like they're an artwork, right? And that's your artwork. You've got a right to it. So the person who signs it, of course, is a person who has, they say that they're going to look after your trust and everything like that. But then they're saying that you can pass it back to them, and like the next one that you get. So it's worth a look, because there's a lot in there that, and they talk about the Catholics, how the Queen was crowned under the Catholic crown, and that's why they do it all through Lord Howe and that. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like I'd be having a good look.
Mm-hmm. Thanks very much for that, Kim. That's
and it's Rom's work. So Rom's.
Oh, it's Rom Stover.
Yeah.
Romney Stewart.
Romney, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just good work, It's same sort of stuff you're into anyway.
Yeah, I've listened to Romney Stewart the other day, going through the birth certificate, and that, and he's very knowledgeable. I spoke to him about eight years ago or so. We had quite a long conversation, and he's definitely worthwhile listening to.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Smart man.
He is a very smart man.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for that, Kim. Daniel, you go ahead.
Crown, I wasn't able to locate your original Crown PDF document that you first looked at on the feed. So I was wondering if you wouldn't mind re-uploading it, if that's okay.
Yeah, you must. I didn't get it either.
Okay.
Must have come on late. He must have put it up before I come on. Excellent, Crown. Thanks.
Okay. So, is there any closing statement or comments you'd like to make, Crown? Maybe.
He's muted. Oh yeah.
Yeah. We haven't even got into the birth certificate stuff yet. A lot of that information that's been put out about the birth certificate is incorrect.
Okay. So perhaps we can get into that next week.
Yeah, that's not a problem. So
does that fit in with your program, with how you want to bring this information to people? Is that that's okay?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. definitely. With what we're dealing with the birth certificate is actually a license.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think
And
if we
there's
leave,
other documents.
if we leave
Other
that there, and we'll get into that next week.
Yeah, we'll do.
That way I can make this video long enough, because I notice when I look at statistics, most people don't have a very long attention span, and they don't tend to hang around in the video. So I want to thank everybody for coming along tonight. And again, I want to thank Crown for being so selfless in the way he shares his knowledge. And I'll just remind everybody again that it's not a matter of joining a club and coming together to wave a flag. What we're looking to do is to find what is correct and what will allow us to stand in our own right. So if you can pull this apart, please do, and bring that information through so that we can look at it. But from my experience, just from my point of view, for what it's worth, this makes more sense than anything that I've been involved in. And the language, the deception in the language is part of the key to things as well. So thanks again, Crown, and thanks everybody for participating. We'll be here again next Thursday, and on Wednesday night we will have a guest speaker. This week that didn't come off, but I think we still achieved something. So thanks again, and we'll say good night to everybody. Take care. See you next week.
Good night, everyone.